The rain ceased after a while, and the two armies came forth from their tents on a fair open field, and drew themselves up for battle. The Turks were arranged in their customary order. As the battle was in Europe, the European feudatory troops were on the right wing, and those of Asia on the left. Prince Bayezid commanded on the right. The other wing was led by Amurat's other surviving son, Prince Yakub. Amurat himself was in the center, with the Yenicheris and cavalry regiments of his guard. The irregulars, horse and foot, the Akanji and the Azabs skirmished in the van. On the Christian side, King Lazarus commanded the center, his nephew Vuk Brankovic led the right, and the King of Bosnia the left wing. Both armies advanced resolutely in the charge and countered each other fiercely, stood their ground firmly, and the event of the day was long doubtful. The Asiatic troops in the left wing in the Mahometan army began at the last to give way before the warriors of Serbia and Albania, who pressed them on the Christian right. Prince Bayezid brought succor from the right wing of the Ottomans, and restored the fight. Armed with a heavy mass of iron, they fought in person in the thick of the battle, and smote down all who dared to cross his path, while the two armies thus starved together, and the field was heaped thickly with earnings. A Serbian nobleman, Miloš Kabilović, wrote to the Ottoman center, pretending that he was a deserter, and had important secrets to reveal to Amurat in person. He was led before the Turkish sovereign. He knelt as if in homage before him, and then stabbed Amurat with a sudden and mortal stroke of his dagger. Miloš sprang up from his knees, and gifted with surprising strength and activity, he thrice cleared himself from the thankful throng of the Ottomans who assailed him, and fought his way to the spot where his horse had been left. But ere he could remount, the Janissaries overpowered him and heaved him into the pieces. Amurat knew that his wound was mortal, but he had presence of mind sufficient to give the orders for the charge of his reserve, which decided the victory in his favor. His rival, the Serbian king, was brought captive into his presence, and Amurat died in the act of pronouncing the deathdom of his foe. The execution of King Lazarus was not the only one of which the royal Ottoman tent was the scene before the close of that day. Prince Bayezid, when the victory over the Christians was secure, returned to the Turkish camp and was acknowledged by his father's generals as their sovereign. Forthright and in the very presence of his father's lifeless remains, Bayezid ordered his brother Jacob, who had fought valiantly through the battle, to decide and put the deed to deed. This fratricide, according to the historian of the empire Sa'ad-ed-Din, was committed in pursuance of the maxim of the Quran. This quid is worse than putting to deed. It was according to the same authority rendered particularly proper by the evil example of revolt which their brother Sauji had given the Amurads lifetime, which proved the necessity of cutting off those who were likely to imitate such conduct. The deed of Jacob was also, according to Sa'ad-ed-Din, justifiable, because the Sultan, the shadow of God upon earth, and the Lord of all true believers, ought to reign in conformity with the ever to be imitated example of God, alone upon the throne, and without the possibility of any one revolting against him. According to some authorities, it was from Bayezid's deadly repeatedly insecure his accession by his brother's deed that he acquired the surname of Yildirim, but his energy involved may well have been the more honorable cause of obtaining this designation. His reign commenced in the camp, and he followed up the war against the Servians with vigor and success that showed him to be the heir of the father's follower, as well as of his throne. Stefan Lazarevich, the new king of Serbia, found that it was hopeless to continue the struggle and entered into the treaty by which Serbia became the vassal state of the Ottomans. Lazarevich gave the Sultan his sister to wife and agreed to pay a tribute money, a certain portion of the produce of all the silver mines in his dominions. He undertook also the render in person military service of the Sultan in all his campaigns, and throughout his life he honorably performed his portion of the compact. In the great battles of Nicopolis and Angora, Lazarevich fought by the side of his brother-in-law. He was, says the modern historian of Serbia, apparently bound of his house by an oath, and with a seal of a kinsman, he exerted himself in the adjustment of courts of quarrel that broke out in the Ottoman family. Having successfully concluded the Servian War, Bayezid passed over to his Asiatic dominions, which he increased by fresh conquests over the neighboring states. In 1319, the Turkish lightning was again in Europe, waging war on the Wallachia, Bosnia, Hungary, and wretched remnants of the Byzantine Empire. Mirice, the Prince of Wallachia, submitted the Bayezid in 1391 to henceforth Wallachia was for centuries in the list of the tributary states of the Ottoman force. The Bosnians, aided by the Hungarians, offered a more obstinate resistance in 1392. The Hungarian king Sigismund advanced into Bulgaria and gained several advantages, but was at the last overpowered by the superior forces of Turks, and driven in utter rout back into his own kingdom. It was while King Sigismund, in the course of his retreat from the campaign, traversed of county of Othmaniyyah, that he saw and became enamored of the Elizabeth mercenary. It is said and sung, the monarchs seldom seek in vain on and from this love passage of the fugitive Sigismund ensured the birth of Othmanians, the great conqueror of the Turks in many well-fought fields. Bayezid's European enemies obtained a seasonable relief from the pressure of his arms by the sudden attack which the Prince of Karamania made 1392 upon the Ottoman possessions in Asia. The Karamanian armies were at first so far successful that the Ottoman troops suffered a complete overthrow between Angora and Bursa, and Timurtash, Bayezid's viceroy in Asia, was taken prisoner. But on the arrival in Bayezid himself in Asia, the fortune of the war was speedily changed. The Karamanian prince was defeated in the captured and placed in the custody of his own former prisoner Timurtash. Without waiting for orders from the Bayezid, Timurtash put the unhappy Karamanian to the deed. Bayezid was at first angry at such an act having been done on the general's own authority, but he excused it on the consideration of high state policy and justified it by the maxim that the deed of a prince is not as bad as the loss of province. That maxim was afterwards regularly quoted by the Turkish rulers when they ordered the execution of any prince. Karamania now submitted to the Ottomans, and all the souls of Asia Minor acknowledged Bayezid as sovereign. He then sent his armies into the east and north of the country and annexed Sivas, the Antioch, Sebaste, Kastamoni, Samson, and Amasya, with their territories of his dominions. Bayezid disdained the title of Emir, which his three predecessors had borne, and obtained from the successor of the caliphs, who was maintained in an empty state by the Mamluk sovereign of Egypt, but still recognized as the religious chief of the Mohammedan world. The superior title of Sultan, proud of his numerous victories and rapidly augmented power, Bayezid now gave himself up for a time of luxurious ease and essential excess of fullest description. He is the first of the Ottoman princes who infringed the law of the Prophet, which forbids the use of wine. His favorite general Ali Pasha had set his master the example of drunkenness, and Bayezid debased himself by sharing and imitating his subjects' orgies. The infamy with which their names are sullied, even the page of Oriental writers, does not end here. They introduced among the Ottoman grandees and the loathsome habits soon spread far and wide, the open and notorious practice of these unutterable deeds of vice and crime, which the natural judgment and mankind in every age and among every race has branded. The most horrible of all offenses against God and man. The Quran is explicit in his denunciation of such acts, but the Turks thought the author respects faithful observers of the law of the Prophet on this point, compromised with their concessions and their creed. The pen recoils from his that detestable subject, and it is indeed one of the shameful peculiarities of such vice that its very enormity secures to the great extent its oblivion. But it is the stern duty of history not to flinch from the facts which prove of fearful a course. The Ottoman power was the lens which the overran during the period of its ascendancy. It became a Turkish practice to procure the treaty, to purchase, by force or by fraud, bands and the fairest children of the conquered Christians, who were placed in the palace of the Sultan, his viziers and his pashas, under the title of pages, but too often really to serve as the helpless materials of optomination. Frequently wars were undertaken and marauding inroads made into other states to collect this most immiscible human spoil for a purpose at which humanity shudders sufficiently appalling is the institution of the Janissaries, by which the Christian boy was taken from his home and trained to deadly service against his father's race and his father's faith. It might seem worthy of having been suggested by the friend whom Milton describes as the strongest and the fiercest spirit that fought in heaven. Moloch, Horrid king, besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears. But infinitely more detestable is the Belial spirit that prompted their other ineffable authorities of Turkish rule. We find an aggravation, not a mitigation of such crimes, when we read that the wretched beings of the promise of whose youth was thus turned into infamy were frequently, when they grew to manhood, placed by their masters in posts of importance, and that the Ottoman Empire has owed many of the ablest, generous statements to the foul source. Pity must be blended with the loathing which the regard dishonest splendors of the involuntary apostates, but the unmixed is abhorrence of the authors of their guilt and shame.